Hi everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth in Story, and I was just going to trim these and had this terrible feeling that when I deleted a different video because normally when I import, if I've done a couple videos on a stick, I'll try to import them in separately, but I had this awful feeling that I imported them all into one folder, so to speak, and then when I was done with that video I deleted all the footage, and so I deleted my footage for the Imperial Dragon Oracle, which I'm going to be doing a walkthrough of today, but I started to trim these already, and so before I go back and redo the walkthrough of this deck, which you're going to see shortly, I did want you to be able to see it untrimmed. So this is the backing with the white edging along the side. And this is the front, where you can see again that white edging that is along the front there. Everything, including the title, is contained within the card itself. And so I don't feel like it at all needs to have those borders on it. And here you can see I've already started to trim them. And it looks fantastic trimmed. So yeah, so I'm going to finish trimming these, and then I will be back to redo my walkthrough of this gorgeous Oracle deck. So I just wanted to at least have you be able to see these. For those people who don't like to trim, I at least wanted you to be able to see them with the borders on, how they were obviously created and intended to be. So there you go. Okay, we are back, and as you can see, I have fully trimmed these. I have also blackened the sides with a king-size Sharpie marker. I like these because they have a chisel point, if you can see that, but there's a chisel point which makes it a lot easier to do than a regular one. I quite like using Sharpie. If I'm going to use black, but at this point I generally am using a Sharpie because it's so much faster and so much neater. There is a little bit of a sheen when you use a Sharpie that you can see, but and some people have problems with it for a while after shuffling. They say that, you know, it kind of rubs off. I've never had a problem with that, so I'm not sure what to tell you on that, but it does, even for people who have had that happen, say that it does kind of end fairly quickly. So to me it's well worth it. The Jim Holtz are great for other colors, and they do have the black, but the drying time and thing is so much longer. This I just kind of literally just go around it once, let you know, kind of wave it for a second, and it's done. So it's just a lot quicker and a lot less messy. So I know we've kind of done things a little bit backwards here, but the deck that we're talking about today is Imperial Dragon Oracle by Andy Baggett and Peter Prakownik. I know that the artist also did the Hobbit Tarot as well as another Dragon Tarot, so I'll have to look those up. I haven't, looked at them very closely. This is by US Game Systems. It is an Oracle deck that is based on the Major Arcana. So there are 22 cards, and they are related to the Major Arcana, although the names have been changed. And of course this is all based on dragons. There is one card in here with a person in it, which is what would be the Empress card. But other than that, there are no people in this deck. It's all dragons. Somebody had mentioned this deck to me in a live chat, I believe, but it's just one of those things that had scrolled through quickly, and I remembered somebody had mentioned it, but that's the only, I've never really seen anything about it. And then Amber, if you'd watched the Love Mail boxing that she sent me, she'd seen it and knew I love dragons, and of course, so she had sent this along to me, but otherwise it was really not on my radar. Let me zoom in a little bit here now so you can see things a little bit better. So it comes obviously in just a tuck box. I will say that it's a bit of a pain in the butt getting them back in and closing the box, because things get stuck on these this lip here, although possibly now that it is trimmed down, I don't know if that's going to make any difference whatsoever. Yeah, see, if I put it this way, I can't get the guidebook to lay, I can't get the guidebook to go in all the way. If I put it this way, it's better, but then I'm crumpling the guidebook. But that was definitely easier. Normally I have had a really hard time getting it in. So with it trimmed down, it's actually a little bit easier. So I'll take that. But it's obviously quite thin because it is just 22 cards. So we have that. Size-wise, let's see here. This is a Llewellyn tear. Now this is trimmed. When it was untrimmed, it was the exact same height, because I did this walkthrough already. It was the same height as a Llewellyn card, but then it was just wider. But you can see trimmed, it's a little bit shorter than a Llewellyn, but it's wider, still a little bit wider. So that's kind of the sizing. I do apologize. I just, you know, one of those things I just totally deleted. I feel like I have a little piece I might need to sometimes I'd have to go back and check where I can see like a little bit of a white where I need to fix that one of the cards. But yeah, it's one of those things. I deleted it, so there's nothing I can do about it but redo it. At least this one isn't a full 78 cards, right? So I don't own a majors only deck, so actually this is really nice to have as both a majors only deck, but then also used as an oracle. Now, because I had previously done the walkthrough, I've actually used this a few times since, so I guess in some ways it's a little bit better because I can actually review it more than first impressions. I have been using it with the Epic Tarot, and I quite love these two together, but I will come back to that at the end when we lay some cards out. But so what you get is the 22 cards, obviously the tuck box, and you can see how my thing is getting all scrunched up because of the way that the tuck box is a little bit too tight. But you do get a 56 page, then it talks about the artist and the author, and the author is a practicing shaman of the Celtic and pre-Celtic tradition who's written some books. And then the artist, like I said, I don't know if this says, he created a deck based on Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and then he also collaborated with Andy Baggett on Ogum or Ohm, the Celtic Oracle, creating the artwork. So I'll have to look that one up as well. The guidebook has an introduction to it, just kind of introducing the dragons. It talks about the world of the dragons. It goes into some of the mythologies, just talking about how, you know, you have dragons in all different cultures across all different times. And sort of that, you know, how I feel about dragons. It's that idea of where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Then it has a section on dragons in Celtic mythology. I wanted to say, so, you know, it talks kind of world things here, and then it goes in specifically into Celtic mythology, and then kind of carrying and preparing for your oracle cards. Getting to know the dragon oracle, so it does talk about the number 22 being one of the master numbers in numerology, as well as being the 22 cards of the major arcana, and you know, kind of how to get to know them and to get used to those things, and then how to consult them. So then it goes into a single card draw, a 3-card draw, past, present, and future, a Cardinal Spread, which I actually quite like. This is one I have done a couple times, and I do like the positions in this 5-card. And then it does give you a sample interpretation. And then the rest of it goes, so that goes to about 28. So the rest of it goes to each of your cards. So I like to give you an example of what the writing is. So here we have number 1, or 0 would be the Seeker, which would be the Fool card. So it gives you the name, which is the Seeker, the number, which is 0, the traditional name is the Fool, the energy is birth, and the keyword meaning is limitless possibilities. Then there's a section on commentary that says, the Seeker holds the energy of new beginnings. He walks with trust and innocence, unaware of worldly limitations. Everything is possible. The only limits are those created by the mind. If you can imagine it, it can become real. Many might say that only a fool would seek out a dragon, but the fool is without fear. If we choose to align our current energy to this magnificent being, it will take us on a wonderful adventure. The meaning section says, you have the opportunity to unlock the limitless potential that you hold within your being. Let go of the past and embrace the realm of self-expression. Let no thought limit you. Don't believe others when they tell you what you are dreaming of, that what you are dreaming of is impossible. You create your own reality and you choose either consciously or subconsciously what you experience in life. Then it has a reversed meaning. There is a great deal of difference between innocence and folly. Folly is mindless action driven by desire originating from the ego, the lower self. Innocence means that we hold the potential within us to create any reality we choose using the power of our higher selves. Stop and ask yourself, who is in charge of my reality? Be wary of making a faulty choice. So that is the text that we have, and so we have that for each of the cards. I quite like the energy and the keyword meanings. I think that those are quite interesting there. I found most of the cards to align with what you would normally think of is with the major arcana. There's some couple that are a little bit of shifts. I quite liked the shift for the Hierophant to compassion, which you don't always see a lot. There were 2 of them that I felt kind of overlapped each other. I believe it was the Lover's card and Temperance. Because for me, the Lover's card is a lot more to do with, it does talk about they're making a clear choice. I'll have to see as we go through them again. There were 2 that I felt like the meanings were so close to each other that it just sort of took away any differences that might have been there. So we'll go through that as we go through. There are a couple cards that I found slightly problematic if I was looking at it as straight on as a major arcana, but what I tried to remind myself of is that this isn't actually the major arcana. It's based on that, but it is an oracle deck system, and so it kind of does, you do want to a little bit pay attention to where they're going with it because of that. I also, when I went through it the first time, was really trying to pay attention to figure out if it seemed like it was pre-existing artwork or if the art was drawn for the cards, which can make quite a difference. And for the most part, I feel like they were probably drawn for the cards. There were some, again, that I felt like maybe didn't quite fit, at least when looking at the major arcana. We do have Astrological Associations in two corners. Sometimes they're the same, and sometimes if there's 2 associated, there's 2, and then the numbers are in the opposite corners here. It doesn't talk about in the guidebook those astrological associations, so if you don't know the symbols, you would need to, get something. I think there should have at least been a quick little symbol guide of the astrological associations, or just added in here. So we have the number, the name, the energy, the keyword meaning, and it probably should just had a section saying the astrological association, because not everybody knows that that's Uranus. And so that's one little thing that I would say. You'll want to maybe just, write in the back here if you're not comfortable with the symbols. You might want to draw yourself a key there just so that you would know what those were as you study it. Or even just write it in right next to each of them, add that in for yourself. Okay, let's just get in here and we'll take a look at the cards. So, of course, we talked about the Fool. In terms of artwork, to me, that's just a dragon. I don't really see anything that gives any particular Fool energy to this. We do have mountains here, but this to me kind of does feel like it was just a artwork that was there. Like I don't see this and I think the Fool at all, but it certainly works. Now the Magus, which would be for the Magician, does have, so we do have kind of the tree for the wands, the pentacle, the cup, the sword. So we do have the 4 elements involved. I do really like the sky in the background of this one. We do have on some of the cards, I guess all of them do have his signature in the artwork, but it's not too obtrusive, I think. Basic idea, this idea of creativity, drawing down spiritual energy is the energy of the card. I'm going to try not to go into each of them, but that's sort of the energy there. Then we have the High Priestess here, which has wisdom, and the energy is connecting with wisdom. So that certainly works. We do even have these 2 trees here that can kind of tap in. We can tell he's in some foggy water, or she, I should say. But again, you know, this could just be a dragon. It doesn't, it works as the High Priestess, but there isn't anything like really saying this is the High Priestess card. We do have the moon here. I almost feel like this in a little ways is even more so to do about more High Priestessy than Empress. It's just such cool tones. I don't really think of the High Priestess, or I'm sorry, I don't really think of the Empress as this type of blues and that, because the energy is abundance of Mother Nature, but I don't see any abundance here. Like the trees are bare, the ground is bare, the key word is fruitfulness. I just don't see that. This is one of the main ones in the deck that I don't really see this particularly as that energy. You know, that's just personal preference. Somebody else might look at that and say, oh yeah, I really see abundance and fruitfulness. Even the commentary, bountiful earth mother springs forth, that wordage, like I don't see that. It says it springs forth from even the most barren of ground. So we can see that this is barren ground, and so we can know that even in barren ground, abundance can be, you know, spring forth, but you're not seeing any of that in the card at all, in my opinion. So it's a beautiful card. I just don't particularly think it embodies the Empress or fertility or abundance, or any of the words that they're using for this particular card. But I mean, I can look at that and I can certainly read with it as such. The Emperor, on the other hand, I think does look like the Emperor. The keyword is power. The energy is strength and determination. The keyword is authority. And we have the red tones. We have this in the hand, as well as the orb in the hand that we sometimes see in the Emperor card. So for me, this actually does feel very Emperor-like. I quite like the purple and the red that gives that sort of regal and ruling energy colors there. So I do actually feel like this feels very much like the Emperor energy. I love the Hierophant as compassion and mercy, and I love this sort of structure here that gives that hint of stained glass window of a church. Even though we're not in a church, we're kind of outside. So I do actually quite like the energy for this is spiritual wisdom, and the keyword is compassion. So I really like what they've done with the kind of Hierophant energy there. Then we have the love card. I don't particularly like the red heart here. You know, it just doesn't need it. We've got the 2 entwined dragons. That's slightly cheesy in a deck that is not at all cheesy. I just don't think it's necessary. But again, well, personal preference here. And this is just, you know, me pointing these things out. I think overall the deck, you know, works really beautifully. But this is talking about unconditional love and acceptance. So for me, the Lover's card is less to do about love and more to do about choices and decisions. Which this does talk about. It says the card represents you with clear choice to either follow old patterns or embrace new ways of thinking. Open your heart, connect with unconditional love. So But I think that this works very well as a lover's card, you know, as love. I mean, it's, again, this is an oracle deck, so it doesn't have to exactly follow the major arcana and what we might, you know, particular or personally see for the major arcana cards. And so that's something that I have to kind of let loose of. It doesn't need to be that. This is just the love card. It's about unconditional love, and that's fine. Here we have the Chariot card, which is called Adversity. This was one I also have to let go of and let it just be an oracle, because there's nothing that I see about the Chariot card that has to do with adversity, other than that you do have the two opposing energies that you're bringing into control. But I don't see it as a do with... it says rising to meet a challenge. It's about change. And it says the only one constant in the universe is change. It's talking about forgetting what we already know and just moving with the energy of change. Those are just things that I don't often think about with a Chariot. I think about confidence. I think about the shadowscapes, you know, that was coming down out of the sky with her arms open, completely in control and confident in her her power and in managing the you know, these opposing forces here. That's what I think about with a Chariot. I don't really think about adversity and change so much. So that's one I just have to let be what it is and not kind of try to force it into the major arcana mold. Here we have the Imperial Dragon. So this would have been the Strength card. And this one is the one, this is the one that I thought was very similar to the Temperance card. Because the only thing that I can see here is that he's holding an egg. So this whole card is supposed to be, now the energy is spiritual power and the keyword meaning is fortitude. But when you read about it, it's talking about the fusion between female intuition and masculine strength. I don't really see the Strength card as about masculine and feminine energy. I really see the Strength card as about internal energy and going internal, doing the healing that needs to be done, and that creating strength. Also that blend of the wild side and the more structured, civilized side. I really don't read these cards as masculine and feminine energy. So I can certainly read this there's nothing here that stops me from reading it that way. So I would just do that. But we do have this kind of, I would assume, a male dragon here holding an egg for the fertility female side, I suppose. But yeah, this is one, because then when you get to the Temperance card, it's also about the blending of the masculine and feminine, making something new. That's what the Temperance card for me is about. So this kind of doubles up the same meaning. So I would just continue to read this as I would normally read the Strength card. And there's nothing about the title that makes me have to do anything but read it as the Strength card. We have Solitaire for the Hermit. I do like that we have the kind of wand here. We have the lantern. It's about knowledge of the inner self and inner wisdom. I think that's quite beautiful. We have the Destiny card for the Wheel of Fortune. It's about the power of change and movement. So this to me works very well. I like the wheel with the pentagram and all the symbols around the side. So this to me works really well. It's a very cool looking card also. I love the Balance card, which is for justice. It's about moral strength and integrity, and the keyword is balance. And I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And of course we have Libra up here, and we also have Venus. For the Hanged Man card, we have the Wounded Dragon, and so he's flipped upside down here. We have all these shields of knights that would have been coming at him, which I think is really cool. It says that the Wounded Dragon does not symbolize suffering, but rather the necessary catalyst to release us from old patterns in order to raise spiritual awareness. The energy is a transition, and the key word meaning is peace. So that's quite interesting there. We have Neptune as the astrological. I quite like the rebirth, which would be the death card. The energy is transformation and the keyword meaning is rebirth. I love all the eggs here. I think we see that in the Wildwood Tarot with the big egg in the water. Then we have Temperance, which we actually have 2 dragons. It's the interplay of yin and yang. It's the unification of opposites and of light and dark, male and female. So again, that's, to me, works very well as Temperance, and that's why I don't know why necessarily they went for that with the Imperial Dragon. You know, I think that if you read this the way that the guidebook read, I think that you'd be kind of doubling up your energy, but that's easily fixed. So I quite like this though. Here we have Mischief for the Devil, which I quite like. Again, the Wildwood Tarot, I think, sort of does that sort of mischievous energy of the devil. The energy is the chaos from which order is born and discernment. And it's talking about undermining stability, creating illusions, avoiding being a victim of mischief. But it can also have that energy of not taking ourselves too seriously, and sometimes you need to play. So it's kind of interesting energy that they used here for the devil, but I certainly think that that's very readable in terms of an oracle. The Destroyer card for the Tower is pretty typical Tower. It talks about the movement from material to spiritual and there being a breakthrough. That sometimes we have to break things down in order to have a breakthrough. But we have almost that fire. Lightning is still going on. We have the Tower, the things on fire, the breaking apart. It's a very traditional, in a sense, Tower card, but it's cool. Here we have the Star card as the firmament, unending cosmos, and it leaves it as an idea of hope. We do have the vessel being poured out with stardust, it almost feels like there. We do have a very watery dragon feel, but he's up in the cosmos, so I think that that's quite lovely. We have Aquarius here and Uranus. Here we have the lunar dragon, which is obviously going to be the moon. I like that we have the full moon here and an eclipsed moon here. I like that we have the towers. We even have the dog still here. So very, very strong lunar energy here. And this is really about illusions. When you read the guidebook, this is very much about the illusionary aspect of the moon, or the shadow self of the moon. And then you have that rebirth into the light with the solar moon, even though it's still at nighttime. Most of these cards do tend to take place in the night. Which is quite interesting. I don't necessarily always think of dragons as being nocturnal, but really almost all of these, even it has that Bohemian Gothic feel. Even when that could be the sun, it still feels like night time. So even in the solar dragon, we have a very nighttime energy. So I would have liked this to have been a full bright sunlight, because it's rebirth into light. We have some Egyptian things here, and this is about illumination. But why that's not in the daytime, I'm not sure. And why all of the ground is barren, like I guess this world is very barren. Well, there's some greenery here. There's definitely a lot of barren lands in this deck. So that's another one I would say, just because it's about bursting into light and illuminating, and it's the solar dragon, I'm not sure why that's at nighttime. I think this is gorgeous. They used Aeon for instead of Judgment, which is what you have with the Thoth deck. I think the image is absolutely gorgeous. It's about the fusion of wisdom and understanding and the completion. It's the end of one cycle and the beginning of another cycle that we have with the Judgment card. I think it's gorgeous. That's a beautiful card. And the Gaia for the world, this is one of my favorite images. It's just stunning. Balance of all the elements and that sense of harmony that it has. So there you have it. I think overall it's quite a gorgeous deck. Again, this one doesn't really work for me in terms of the Empress, but I can certainly read it with that energy. You know, same thing with this. I don't necessarily read that as a Chariot, but if I just let it be an Oracle deck, you know, that's all right. So there's a couple that I find to be slightly problematic, but when you kind of step away and say, okay, but this is not just the major arcana, this is an Oracle deck, you know, you can kind of let that go. It's quite thin cardstock. I think some people maybe wouldn't be too thrilled with it. It's thinner, I would say, than even the original, like let's say Llewellyn cardstock. It's definitely thinner. But there's only 22 cards, and they're easily to shuffle. I had no problem shuffling them with the borders or without the borders. So. And truthfully trimmed, you can even go sideways like this because, well, I do have long hands for a woman, but. So let's take a look. And just remember that when I'm doing a walkthrough like this and I'm pointing out things and you're like, oh, well, that's kind of nitpicking, but that's kind of my job, I feel, is to make sure any kind of issues that I might see that you're aware of, because that just helps you make a decision. None of the issues that I've pointed out would stop me from using this. I have actually used it and quite enjoyed using it. But, you know, when I'm kind of doing a walkthrough so that people can decide whether or not they want to purchase something, I do want to make sure that I'm pointing those things out. So the reading that I'm going to show you, because I do like to do a spread from the actual deck so that you can see kind of how they're doing it. And I quite like this. It's called the Cardinal Spread. It's a 5-card spread that kind of spirals around to the middle. And the one that I did was quite pertinent, so I wish I still had that one because it went really, really well. But such is the nature of life, right? You just gotta roll with it. Okay, so the first position is the root of the issue. And here we have the Empress card. The second card is my guide in the issue, which we have. I did shuffle these. We have the guide as the Emperor. The third card is what I need to learn from the situation. The fourth card is obstacles or challenges to be aware of. And then the fifth card is the potential future if all the lessons are learned. If you take kind of heed to what's being told here, these are, this is the potential future. Let's see if I can get that so you can see it a little bit better. Am I zoomed out all the way? Let me make sure. Oh, there we go. There. So just in a quick nutshell here, we would have sort of the issue is about creativity and fertility and growth and sort of taking and growing things and making things, making something abundant. That's the idea of growth and fertility here. And what a guide is going to be is the Emperor, which is interesting because he's about kind of structurizing things. So that this would be a message to me that would say, in the process of creation and of growing something, you still want to keep things structured, right? You don't want things to get so out of control in growth that you kind of have the jungle taking over. You still want to keep some structure and some stability in that growth. That's what's going to help in this process. So if this would be, let's say, me growing my business. And I didn't think on that. This is not drawn specifically for that. I'm just kind of using it as a example of how you might read it. So if the question was about kind of growing a business, well, okay, that's great. We want to be putting the creativity in. There's the abundance. So that's the issue, is how to grow, say, this particular business or somebody's job or whatever they're trying to do to grow it. So we would have that represented there as that being the primary issue, is growth. And then the help would be to say, okay, we want growth, but we want structured growth. We want to make sure that it's not getting out of hand and turning into a lush, beautiful tropical forest. We want to contain it a little bit, structure it, so that we make sure it's kind of that slow and steady growth is what I would get from that. And then what I need to learn would be balance, which really goes hand in hand, I think, with keeping things structured. You want the growth, you want the abundance, you want the creativity, but you want to keep things in balance. You want to not be ruled by emotions. You don't want to see things only through emotion. You want to see through the emotions and into the truth of the situation, and to keep things always in balance. Keep a check on ourselves to make sure that as I move forward, as the growth happens, that it's being done in balance. And then a challenge could be this Imperial Dragon, which for me is the Strength card, and I'm going to read much more like the Strength card, which again is, truthfully, if you think about it, is a balance card, keeping that balance between the wild side and the civilized self, as well as keeping that inner working that is going to help move me forward, or move, that the internal things that somebody has to work on can feed growth. But that can also be a challenge that you don't want to kind of overlap the two, and that you may need to keep separate some personal issues that may need to be worked out and dealt with and healed, so that they aren't a challenge to your growth as you move forward. So that's kind of how I might read that. And then the possible outcome is the Hermit card, which is great, especially in this deck. It really is about inner knowledge and having learned something internally. Let's see what else they say here. So I don't want to just read it as the Hermit, just in case. Let's check it out. Knowledge of the inner self, this is doing the inner healing. But it does talk about walking the path of an outsider and seeking their own way. So that's interesting. If we were looking at this in terms of a business, it would say, you can look to others for knowledge and to learn from and things, but in the end, you really do have to walk your own path. You do have to go your own way, make this sort of your own thing that you have learned from your own things, your own trials, your own journey is what this has taught you. So I would read this as the potential outcome is one that is successfully going on a path that is going your own way and going the way that things will work the best for yourself, because this is your journey. So that's, quite lovely. I really do like this spread. I know that was just like a quick, because I've done this twice, but I do quite like this spread. It's one that I would definitely be using with other cards as well, with other decks, just with tarot decks, because I like the spread. So I'm actually really pleased with this deck. I do like having a majors only deck, which I don't have, because sometimes I run across spreads that are major only decks, and I really don't like to sit there and go pick out the majors of a deck. So this way I actually do have a majors only deck. But I will say that I've really been loving this. And I know there's a couple people on here who have mixed feelings about the Epic Tarot. But there are also people who have had some really good experiences with it. And I will say that these two decks read really good together. I've been really pleased with. And at first I thought, well, this is kind of, it's a major deck. So we're kind of, if we mix the two, we're kind of getting two, doubling up the major energy. But I actually haven't seen that to be much of a problem, because I have been kind of letting it be oracle, let it being sort of overarching energy, and then sort of pulling the cards on top of that. But I really found these two play really nicely together. Plus they look gorgeous together. So I might like pull like that, where I have pulled 3 tarot cards, and that's how I've generally been doing it, and pull that as sort of an overarching energy, the idea of unconditional love, and then you know, going through and look at all the courts and majors we have going on here. But just in terms of purely aesthetically, I think that these decks just kind of beg to, because the kings are all dragons in this deck, coloration wise, I think it just looks gorgeous. I mean, look at that. They really, really go well together. And so I certainly certainly will be thinking of these two decks when I'm using one over the other. With the I'll probably be using these in conjunction quite a bit, because I found them to read really beautifully together and look really beautiful together. So that's kind of what I've been doing with this deck. So thank you to Miss Amber for this lovely gift. Surprise, you know, it was fun to look at something that I really hadn't seen any of the cards on, and so it was quite a surprise, and I have again found it to be really lovely. If you enjoy dragons, these are not fluffy dragons whatsoever. These are very strong dragons. These are very Dungeon and Dragons, very Lord of the Rings. Like, these are how I see dragons, more as, you know, nothing fluffy about them, but very old and very wise. And the backs are reversible because they do give reverse meanings. And I quite like them trimmed. I think they are gorgeous, trimmed down. So there you have it. Thank you for taking a look with me at these cards. I hope that they've helped you to see whether it's a deck that you would like to have. And if you like the Epic Tarot or have it, I would suggest use it. If you have this and really like it, I would suggest you might want to give a look at the Epic Tarot, which I also have a walkthrough of. And I need to trim these edges, but look, I need to find this sort of like gray teal almost, that I haven't quite found the coloration for that, but I really want to do these sides, so I have to get on that figuring that one out. So I'll have to show these to Otzi and have her try to tell me, because she's the queen of that, picking the right colors. So anyways, I'm rambling now, so everybody have an absolutely wonderful week.